Welcome to the Alien Flamethrower tutorial. This is a replica of the incinerator unit seen in Alien, used by most of the crew members. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to trim and assemble the parts using pinning techniques. The emitter, handles, and regulator components are painted in Alumoluster, providing for a metal-like finish. The flamethrower is then weathered using oil washes and airbrush techniques. I fully remastered and retooled this entire kit this summer, and I'm excited to finally build this updated flamethrower. Let's start this tutorial by reviewing this kit. The reason for this retool is there's a whole bunch of photos I discovered in the last year or so, mostly from prop stores of London, that show one of the film-used flamethrowers, and so I was looking at that detail and decided, man, I need to make some changes. So I 3D modeled. This already was starting out as a great body, like super detailed, but could use improvement. So I started out by modeling this tube. That's an addition. On the opposite side, I've got an accurate part from the 8-rad that's on the film used model. I remodeled this canister. I added a whole bunch of these nipples. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little conical nipples. Just 3D printed those and added those on there. Cleaned up the body. I added this beam here. If you can see, it's got little divisions. And I've got this little row of detail. That's all there. The prop store of London model had some pieces break off, I noticed, so I kind of like this was broken in half actually on that prop store, so I made it the full length. And this member here elevates the rod, and that's also missing from the prop store piece, but it's on the film use piece. So this rod now, I realized, sits on top of that platform. Let me see, on this side I added a knob. That's accurate to the film used version. There's a little knob right there. The regulator, completely redone. This sits on with 3 rods that correspond to those 3 holes. And that I modeled as the main body, the red knob, this brace piece, a spacer, another spacer, and then the rear knob. The nozzle is now 3 parts. This used to be kind of it wasn't very accurate before, so completely I modeled that in 3D CAD. So you've got your end piece, the middle, and the connection piece. There's a whole bunch of new detail parts, so instead of a big baggie full of miscellaneous pieces I used to have, now it's very specific. This sits on the underside. This guy sits on the front. The triggers are now separate pieces, just like the film used one. So instead of there being a modeled in trigger, this one will bury inside the body. The tanks have all this detail now. This little guy, I noticed in one of the prop store photos, he lives right behind that piece, so he lives right there. Never saw it before, but I noticed it and modeled it, printed it, part of the kit. Let's see, the tank is still a standard piece of PVC. Includes laser cut end caps and front cap. As a little treat, you can use this or not, but it's the Weyland-Yutani logo. There's a hose, this little dude. Again, I had to piece this together because the prop store model is missing this, but I saw it in one of the really blurry reference photos. But this hose doesn't end there, it continues. So this needs a little bit of a trim, but it continues and it pushes right into that spot right there. The rest of the supplies and hardware for this kit can be found at any box store, but for an added cost, I can do all the shopping for you and even trim these pieces. This is how the parts come out of the box to you. White, unprimered resin. There's only 3 pieces in this entire kit that need seam line cleaning, and those are these 3 right here. As you can see, there's just a really minimal seam line laterally across these three parts. You can't really even see it, but it's there. So we're going to mix up a little bit of Bondo, spread it across these seam lines really thinly, and sand everything flush just to get things ready to paint. All it takes is just a real thin glaze. Here's our parts all cleaned up. Really minimal seam line cleaning. That only took me about half an hour from when I applied that Bondo. Okay, so I'm going to make a hole in the front of this to accept the dowel out of the emitter. And I'll show you how that goes together in a little bit. But let me go ahead and make this hole right here. I bored this bottom hole on the body just a little bit deeper so that it accepts that tank like this. Alright, these are ready to paint. One tank is red, the other is white, and the body white. All flat white paint. I'm using a standard rattle can Rust-Oleum flat white. For the second tank, standard Rust-Oleum apple red. The rod and the vent, flat white. Okay, these are our 4 silver pieces. You can just spray paint these with rattle can silver, that would be fine. I'm going an extra level in this tutorial and painting these with Alumoluster. So I'm just preparing these parts. This one needs a tiny bit of dremeling here at the bottom edge to get rid of those little flashing points for the sprues. So the handles, because they were cast open face, might have a couple of little bubbles. We're going to fill those real quick with some Bondo. Sand them nice and smooth, polish flat. These guys are ready to go. And I'm going to be installing 2 dowels into each of these handles at the top so they can insert into the body. That'll give us a little connection point so we can paint them easier too. So to use the Alumoluster properly, we're going to be painting these guys in automotive gloss black, all 4 of these pieces. Just make sure they're nice and polished before you head in with your black. I've applied my Bondo and I've got all those tiny little micro holes filled up. I'm going to finish this on some 500 grit paper. Get a nice smooth, baby butt smooth polish. And I've got 2 holes drilled in for these dowels. I was using these Forstner bits. God, they are so nice to use. Highly recommend Forstner bits for doing dowel insertion. Okay, so I'm just going to epoxy these in place. The nozzle is 2 pieces. Your cap piece goes on that flat end, centered. And there's one seam line on this that you might have to sand and Bondo a little bit and get that cleaned up. Then these are engineered for standard size dowels. So you'll glue those on. This is the mounting piece. Again, I've got engineered holes already set in place. And there is your assembly. Here it is, fully assembled. I'm going to drill a hole in the bottom of this so I can mount it. And the film used version looks like it's mostly black. These might look like they're white. It's really hard to tell. I know this is white. But what I'm going to do is spray this along with my other parts, gloss black, Illumoluster, so I can start with a really nice metal looking finish. And then we'll weather after that. On the bottom of that, this is how it's going to mount to the body with a wooden dowel. And I offset another little hole so I can suspend this off my painting rack. This is the PVC tube and the 2 laser cut end caps for your rear tank. I'm going to clean these edges up just a little bit on both ends. And then what I'll be doing is gluing one of the caps. Fits perfectly. And then I'll be inserting a wooden dowel to attach it to the rear of the flamethrower body. And I want to get a little bit of meat inside there for that dowel to grab onto inside here. So before I attach this, I might scrape this up a little bit, put in a nice big blob of Bondo. I added about a 1/2 inch of meat inside this end. And I'm going to find the center of this. This is a really interesting tool. I never get to use this, but this is a center finder. And you just draw lines all the way around this. This is meeting up against a lip. Really cool tool for finding a middle. And then where all those lines intersect, right here, is the exact center. Okay, so I'll be inserting a really beefy dowel, one of these guys here. So let me go ahead and drill a hole through this. Okay. Now we can insert our dowel. I can epoxy that from the, actually I can epoxy that from the inside. And then this will mount directly to our incinerator body. Okay, so I'm going to glue that in place, cap it off with the second piece, and paint this white. There is our corresponding hole for attaching our rear tank. Here's everything mounted, the nozzle, the regulator pieces, the handles. I've got it all suspended on this rack. It's just a very simple couple pieces of 2x4s with holes and brass rods. And we are ready to get these guys gloss black and then chrome them with Illumoluster. Let's paint. For today's tutorial, we're using this HVLP gun. This is a touch-up gun. These are $14 at Harbor Freight. I picked that one up yesterday. I have a water trap. These are about $5, I think, at Harbor Freight also. So you want to make sure you use a fresh water trap each time. And then for doing your 2K top coat, clear coat, making your parts glossy, Amazon.com. There's a couple different brands you can use, but I really like this one. Acme Finish. This is FC720. And there's a medium hardener I'm using, FH612. So there you go. And then for doing our chroming, Illumoluster, my favorite. Alright, let me get to work and show you these techniques. Here's the level of gloss we've achieved on these parts. The shinier it is, the more brilliant the chrome will look. Okay, here goes our Alumoluster. I'll usually do a light coat, let it set up for about 10 minutes, and then come back in with a wet coat. But just after one coat, you can see that chrome. Here is how the regulator turned out in silver. That is going to look amazing. I have my 2 laser cut triggers and 2 of these spacers that go on the regulator. These are all silver. This regulator knob is red. I'm using a semi-gloss red. Seems to be a little bit shiny in some of the reference shots. This regulator knob is black. I'm doing this a semi-gloss black. And this knob is gray, just a regular Krylon gray. I'm going to drill a few more holes onto the underside of this incinerator body, and that's where these pegs are going to insert for these handles. So I've got 2 at the rear, very far back, and up here towards the front I have another 2 little holes for these 2 pegs. Before I adhere this handle down all the way, I'm going to take it back off and Dremel a little slot for this trigger. And I'm going to bury it inside this so that you don't have to worry about somebody breaking this. If they squeeze the trigger, it'll just bend. You can see a trigger. What I did is slotted a little space here and I angled it back so that that trigger can live inside here just by a little bit. Angled backwards, and that is what this looks like back here. So we have this trigger and we have some give. Pretty cool. Here's how this regulator goes together. You've got your black knob. I countersunk. You're going to need to countersink a screw just so it sits in a little bit deeper because you need more meat. You'll see why here in a second. Then we've got a spacer, one of the laser cut spacers. We have this component, another spacer, and I already pre-drilled a hole into this, and that just all screws together like this. And now I can pilot a little hole under here to sit on top of that pin. And to attach the red tank, we need to drill a hole into this pylon for the wooden dowel coming off the top of the red tank to insert into there. I have my hole drilled, I have my dowel sticking out of the red tank, and it will live just like that. Here's the finished regulator attached to the black knob, the red knob, and the red tank. That is amazing. It's going to look so good. Let's attach these screens to the vent. So I'm going to spray 77 this guy. And put them right into place. And now I can glue this into position with a little bit of a lip, just a little bit of an exposed lip right there. Let's go ahead and fine detail this white tank. These are the laser cut detail plates. And here's the bottom connection. I'm going to drill a little hole into this, embed that guy, and install these. Here's the orientation of those greebly panels. We've got this here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces there and 2 pieces here. I've got a little hash mark. Oh, and I also, off camera, I installed this little nipple here, the hose connection. I wish I had done that on camera. It actually threaded in place. The threads from the fitting I cast actually threaded in. It was awesome. Okay, so this orients. I've got a little hash mark here. This orients like this. Just refer to your reference shots to see where these go. So I'm facing that way, and this greebly is here, and the other one is just on the other side of that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and permanently attach this tank. This greebly detail goes right here. This greebly piece glues to the underside at the front, at the edge here. This detail chip glues here at the center. And finally, this guy glues here behind the vent. These are 2 little nut details. There's a laser cut disc and the little hex nut head goes on top of that. This mimics a washer and nut. I have the handles attached, the triggers attached, the details in place, these guys here. There is this hose that connects to that hose, and there's a drill a little hole here, trim that to get it to fit nice and tight right there. This vinyl decal is completely optional, but I want to add it, the Wayland Yutani logo, right to the rear of this tank. This strap attachment hardware is really easy to find on Amazon. I'll provide a link for that in the description. They're white, but because of the wear, they're rubbed off silver at the rings, so that'll be really easy to do later with a little bit of solvent. So let's get these white first. This is a couple lengths of irrigation hose from Home Depot. This isn't part of the standard kit, but for a deluxe kit I can include this pre-cut hosing. So we're just going to spray paint this black hosing white. Alright, let's attach some of our hose detail. I've got a hose that comes off of the back of this nozzle. So I'm going to drill a hole here for that. And it comes off and it comes over and attaches to this corner. So I'll do another hole right here. On the nozzle, there's a spark plug boot. This is part of the deluxe kit if you get the add-ons. And I'm going to attach this. This comes out about right here. And I'll be attaching that using a dowel embedded into that, and this just pressure fits onto there. And then there's a hose that'll fit inside of that boot, and it comes over and connects to the center front of the vent. I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole for that. Nozzle, this is all white, and the white kind of fades and blends into the silver. So let me show you how I'm doing this. Got my airbrush out so I can control this. So I'm going to bring the white out maybe about halfway up these rods, and the rest all the way down is all white. I imagine that it's all the scorching that's happening. This will be weathered really severely, and it's chipped away all the paint, burned away all the paint, except at the very ends here. This body has gone through a lot of handling. Before I start weathering, I just want to restore everything back to white. It's going to be really dirty. This probably doesn't make any difference. It's just going to dirty right back up. But I do want to just do a few touch-ups. Before I start weathering, let's take a quick look at how all this is going together. I've got that spark plug boot connecting there at an angle. That hose goes to there. Got a hose coming out of that emitter that comes in. It tucks under that. It comes in here. It tucks under that first pin in here. It goes up to that corner. I've got the emitter the regulator is all assembled. There's the red tank, the white tank, handles are on, triggers are on, details are all here. I've got the strap mounting hardware in place, and we are ready to start weathering. This is a big model, over 32 inches. I'm going to be using some solvents for doing some washes, so I'm going to clear coat all the white sections. This is a Rust-Oleum matte clear, so I'm not going to touch the silver areas, but I will get all the white portions. Just want to make sure that none of the paint comes off during my weathering phase. The matte sealer has been drying on here for a few hours. I'm ready to start painting. We're going to use a variety of techniques. But first, I'm using oil paint, a reduced down oil paint with mineral spirits. And I'm just going to start coming in here and discoloring. Normally I would start with an airbrush doing this, but today I decided to do oil paint. You can also use an acrylic mixed down with water wash. Lately I'm really getting into enjoying how oil paint flows. If you feel like you're going too heavy, you can always backtrack and overspray with flat white again. Bring it back down to its base tone and then begin again. What you can also do with this is just grab straight mineral spirits And if you feel like you don't like a pattern that's happening or a buildup that's happening that you want to get rid of, just grab straight mineral spirits and rub it off. Move that paint around. Shake it up. There's some areas here, some inset details that I want to get dark. I want to darken them up inside those pits, so I'm going to liberally apply this oil paint into here. Then I'm going to wipe it off and let that paint settle and dry into those crevices. I've got a bit of my flat white back in my airbrush, and I'm going to overspray just a little bit. Just a tiny bit on this side. There's a little more on the other side, but I got a little bit excited with that oil wash last night and went a little overboard. So here we go, just bringing it back down, retoning it back to white a little bit more. And then we'll have another pass, and then we'll start getting to work with darkening this up with an airbrush. Don't forget to weather your rod. So after this initial wash coat, pretty happy with how that is. We're going to go in with some airbrushing. I have some Tamiya flat black, and I'm going to distress the silver areas, this nozzle and the handles, not too terribly much. I don't want to lose all of my luster, but I do want to make this look as if it's been used. So I'm going to go and shade this down. And if you can see this, I'm going to get inside these nozzles. Make that look a little bit scorched. That's good. And then tone down the rest. Same with this. This is looking really super too new. So let's tone it down. Let's get it a little bit darker here where this connection is. And I probably won't commit all of this to film, but I'll go in and I'll look at my reference shots and I'll darken up as I see necessary. But that's the idea. Just real light. Just go light at first. And then just keep working your way down this model. This handle here, this knob on the top is probably getting used more than other parts, so that's going to be a little more distressed. And the tank itself looking a little dirty. The rod has some pretty heavy scorching at the front of it. And I've got my air pressure turned down pretty low. It's pretty low. It's about 15 right now. I'm just going to feather some dark onto that end like this. In some of the reference shots, this connector for the emitter is pretty dark, so I'm going to feather in some scorching here. On this side, I'm looking at these reference shots, by the way. My laptop took a dump on me, so I'm having to use my phone, but I can see well enough that there are some dark indications around these buttons. Not at the top, so I'm going to get some solvent and wipe that away a little bit. It's sort of shadowy in here. Shadow that. I'm going to continue weathering this tank on this side. continue weathering the handles. I see some dark happening over here. Okay, again, this tank is a little bit, not that much. It's just a little bit darker than the rest, so I'm just going to come in, kind of do that with that. Okay, but you get the idea. I mean, I'm basically shading this model, making it look really super old, keeping everything uniform. I see shadowing over here. This line over here has some shadow. Okay, there we go. And over here, I might darken this. I mentioned that I got a little bit of overspray on these knobs. So I'm going to wipe some of this paint off. And if I got too much off, which I did, I can come in and shade again. Oop, happy little accident. You see that little paint drop there? Not a problem. Alright, I'm liking that. In some of my reference shots, I can see a dark band here. This does not appear in the Prop Store of London auction item. I believe that was completely repainted, but I do see this dark band on screen caps and in some other reference shots from the 80s. So I have this masked off. I'm just going to do a really, really super light band of dark on that rear tank. Really light though, just a really light mist. That's enough right there. Let's see what this looks like. Oh yeah, there it is. You can see that division right there. Just what I wanted. There is rust and ochre staining on that section there. So let's get to that. Okay, that's what I'm seeing. In this area right here on this side of the tank, I can see some wear, some silver showing through. So I'm just going to scribe that in. It looks like it's a dark silver, and this will be just fine. I see a little bit chipping it here. And a big streak there. I spy something odd and interesting. It looks like a piece of gold foil, gold vinyl right there. I happen to have gold vinyl. There we go. I'm just going to hit that with a little bit of dark to darken it up, and that's done. I'm going to introduce just a few scratches on this tank. I'm seeing a little bit of that action. Not very much, just here and there. Just where you think it might get bumped. It's kind of shoved into its storage locker and smashed around a little bit, so you're going to have scrapes here and there. The last thing to do here is attach our strap hardware. I'm going to rub some of this paint away with a little bit of this thinner off of these connection pieces because they are worn away in the movie. And there we go. Just scrape that away and reveal that metal. Amazon.com has these also. These little webbing connection pieces. And now I'm just going to attach a piece of 2-inch webbing to both of those, and we'll be calling this done. There's the Alien Nostromo Flamethrower in all its glory. What a beast this is. 3-day build. Super happy with these details. Man, what a display piece. I'm so glad you got to join me on this video. We saw a lot of attachments using pins. I shared some Alumoluster techniques with you. We weathered with oil washes. I showed you my airbrush weathering techniques. What a lot of fun, and what a tremendous wall display this will be. Anyways, if you enjoy this content, please share and like and subscribe to see future content. I'll put some links to my social media in the video description. And as I always say, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.